Amazing, we're live. Hey, everybody. My name is Cody Paraset, but my name's just Dakota. That's my legal name. Just real quick, welcome back to episode 3 of what we're calling the BYO Table Talk. Essentially, we're just going through kind of an oral history of the company of Bring Your Own Theater, or BYOT, as it's more affectionately known. If you've made it this far into our little series here, you've kind of heard us gush about the company back in May when we did our birthday episode. We followed that up with our second episode talking about HQ, which was sort of technically home base number 1, or where we did the majority of our earlier shows. And now, today, we're going to talk about the Charnel House years and just the nomadic kind of period that kind of happened between HQ and going into Charnel House. So you might hear some repeat stuff from the previous video as we get caught back up. But yeah, so just real quick again, I'm Cody. I'm the artistic director for BYOT. I've been a company member since 2018. And now the two lovely people joining me
are. Go ahead, dear.
Okay, I wasn't sure who was going to go first. I'm Meg Riley, and I am on the advisory board. I formerly was the director of development on staff twice, and I've been with the company, I think I just figured out it's been like 7.5, almost 8 years now, since the early days.
And I'm Jason Rowe. I served as managing director for more years than I can remember to some degree. And I think I've been with the company now for 5-ish years. With a little bit of wiggle room, I think that's about right. I don't know anymore. It's been a number of years. A good long portion at this point.
Amazing. I get that feeling too. It's like because COVID it's like throws a wrench into like this space time continuum. It's just like, right, no, it's been this many years. It has been this many years. It's weird. I had the thought today. It was like, I think I've gone probably as long the past 2 years of the pandemic seeing people since roughly the same amount of time that I knew people when I came in it, which is kind of eerie to think about. But it's great things like Zoom where I'm able to at least see both of your faces when I'm not seeing you live.
Exactly.
Yeah. But thanks for doing this. Really appreciate you guys sharing. We're filming this on a Wednesday night, and that is valued currency. So thank you. So yeah, kind of at the end of our last episode, we talked a little bit about HQ, where it was in the city, what it was, this kind of wonderful Bachian, like death trap warehouse, like fun space. I don't know if that fully covers it. But kind of, and there was a real sudden like, oh, we actually have to move, which was like kind of an undercurrent of like, yeah, we might be selling it, we might not be selling it. It's like, oh, they're really selling. And then kind of like the not necessarily mad scramble, but like there were some very fun one-off or DIY or random spaces that shows happened in, which I kind of want to cover from both of your perspectives, having actually been in those spaces. And then, yeah, just kind of what led from those hopscotch locations to Charnel, which is where I came. So I don't know, whoever wants to kind of talk about maybe just right there at the end of HQ into the nomad years.
So I know I can speak to specifically the charnel side of things really well. I feel like there's a period of during that nomad period that I cannot remember which spaces were in the nomad period and which ones are pre-HQ. However, Jason as tech lord, possibly you'll remember some of them better. Like I feel like there was like that one place with the mirrors that may have been a dance space. So maybe why don't you speak to some of the nomad spaces, and then I can fill you in on how we found Charnel, and then how that all shook out.
Yeah, at the time I was not on staff during this transition period, but I was kind of functioning as tech because that's what I do. I'm an IT guy in my normal profession, and I enjoy pushing buttons and audio engineering and just doing that kind of stuff on the fly. It's always been my enjoyment factor with the company. So that the transition was interesting because at the time the staff was scrambling to, okay, let's get everything out of the office, let's go. Well, where are we going to be next month? Okay, where's all our stuff? It's in a bunch of boxes shoved in in somebody's house. Eventually it makes its way to the storage locker. So there was just kind of this weird transitionary period where it's like, okay, we don't have all our props, the few props that we do have. Where are we going to be? And every month I would sign up because I still enjoyed doing it, but it was always okay, what are we going to look like? What are the acoustics in this place? Because some of the places we ended up at were just hole in the wall kind of establishments that could do theater stuff, but okay, well, we don't have a dedicated sound system anymore. We don't have a dedicated soundboard. We don't have dedicated speakers or lights and things like that. So all of the old living room equipment was coming back out of the woodwork. So we got the light board, which Corey had created, which was an electrical death trap with a series of a wooden box with a series of dimmer switches that had all been wired together with a number of plugs on the outside that all fed off of one ungrounded plug, which always made me feel very comfortable using it. I'm like, this thing is going to light on fire one of these days, and it's going to be pretty entertaining. And I'm like, I have to find a way to be able to put out the fire without disrupting the performance. That was always the biggest concern, was like, the show has to go on, but also don't burn the building down. So, we ended up stealing Greg Torbeck, who was on staff as well at some point. Prior to him being on staff, we had stolen his sound bar for his TV. So that was our sound system. It was a Bluetooth sound bar that I could connect into. I had my laptop. We had the light box and our herpetology lamps that we could attach on limited extension cables. So we made do. It was a little ramshackle, but it very much kind of felt back to earlier roots before we had been that long established into the HQ period, which very much felt like we were spoiled, just given the space and the equipment that we had. So there were some interesting ones. We ended up at there was a space that was this. It's kind of this weird storefront kind of a place that it was giant. It was this massive space. It was like glass across most of the walls. So during the day, it was fantastic. But then in the evening, it was practically pitch black in there. And because of the distances, I was sitting in this back corner, hooked into the Sonos sound system that had been installed in the ceiling, and could barely do much of anything. There was a delay. I had to program a built-in delay to everything I had. Of like, okay, I need to know roughly about 10 seconds ahead of time when this cue is going to come. So I hope they've hit their marks. So there was just it was interesting. It was always a challenge. trying to work through some of these circumstances. So it was interesting.
And did a lot of those kind of tend to center around where HQ was, which is like kind of, I think, the Logan Square area, or you guys kind of hopscotch across the city?
In talking to development at with a lot of the managers and on staff at the time, it was pretty much anywhere we could find. It was a mad scramble to just get a space that could accommodate us on a monthly basis. So we were all over the place, north side, west, everywhere at that point.
It was actually something that we realized. Obviously, Jason and I at that point were not on staff. I had been on staff. And Cody, you will probably feel a lot of respect and sympathy for the staff at that time, because we had literally just had a giant staff turnover, and that's when HQ was sold. So similar to your situation of a giant staff turnover and COVID hits, that's exactly how it went down. And so they were flying blind. And part of the problem with moving around so much is when we were at HQ and we were there every month, we had a very large dedicated group that was coming all the time. And HQ was off the, not California, not Western, one of the Blue Line stops, Bucktown. Was it the Western? I don't remember, but it was off of one of the Blue Line stops. So it wasn't very far from where Charnel House ended up. But it was like, I'm still surprised that floor didn't just collapse, because we would have giant amounts of people there each month in the audience. And then on top of the complete, fully stacked out cast, we tried having 5-person scenes, which is a nightmare. Don't have 5-person scenes. It's not enough time to give everyone something to do. And then we'd have waiting lists. So HQ, we had all these people. And then when you're nomadic, and especially if you're nomadic and sometimes you have to move the weekend of the show, it makes it very difficult, because people don't just know, oh, it's the last weekend of the month. Oh, cool, I'm going to go to the same place I always go. And it just made it a lot really difficult for the staff at that time, I'm sure. So with that, at some point, I believe it was after the Rover, which I cannot speak to because I was not part of the Rover. But if you ever want to do an episode about our full-length shows, we can talk about the Rover. But it was sometime after the Rover, Jason got pulled on staff. And eventually I got pulled back onto staff. And we were trying to think of what to do with this problem, right? That we had this nomadic situation. It was very difficult to keep an audience coming back over and over, and the cast to come back over and over. So prior to all of this, if we go back a couple of years, it's 2016, and probably actually more like late 2015, sometime in 2015. And I'm walking down the street from my apartment, which was at Kimball and Fullerton, and I see a sign outside of this building that looks like a Gothic castle, but tiny. And it says, Lady Gruach, this show about Macbeth sort of show. It was being done by Death and Pretzels and written by, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Paul, I can look up his name later. Wonderful guy. And we go, I see it and I'm like, oh, I just joined the staff of this theater company. So it must have been like early to mid 2015. So I'll see if the other staff members, because we're trying to meet other theater companies, want to go to the show. At this point, we're still at HQ. if not nomadic. And so we all go, and we really enjoyed it, but we really enjoyed the space. And like I said, it was literally around the corner from my apartment, which was really convenient. So later in late 2015, early 2016, we're trying to plan for By Definition, which is another one of our full-length shows we did. It was written by Josh Leeper. Oh my gosh, sorry, Josh. And it is a great show. It's on YouTube. If you've got the time, watch it. It's hilarious. But we needed a space for it, and we started to shop around, and we come across, well, why don't we do it in Charnel? Because the show is set in a library, and if you've been to Charnel, it's got all these wooden walls and like wall sconces, because Charnel House is a former funeral chapel, and it has that vibe, and so it just sort of fit. And what's really great about Billy and Vicky, who own Charnel House, is art is really important to them. And so they make it their mission to make it very affordable for theater to happen in their space. And then they also rent it out for parties. Like October is their biggest time of the year, for example. So they really try to focus in on making it affordable for actual theater and actual performances to happen there, and make up the rest of it elsewhere. And they were great to work with. We had nights that we shouldn't have been, but we were sitting there gluing covers on books. You'll find out why another time, at like 2 a.m. And they were like, yeah, sure, whatever. And they lived upstairs, so they didn't mind. And they've always been great to us, you know. The only stipulation was they run the bar, which we were fine with, because we were very sick of the BYOB atmosphere of the nomad times. And they were great. So we had a great experience with them for BYOT. And when Jason and then I joined the staff during that nomadic time, I was like, hey, listen, I know what you're paying for these nomadic spaces. Way back when we looked at doing shows regularly at Charnel House, we thought they were too expensive because we were doing stuff in people's living rooms, you know.
Right.
Now it's not a problem, you know. We are already paying for spaces, and we know we love the space, and we know we love Billy and Vicky. Why don't we check them out? And that's what we did, and it's been perfect, you know. The only thing that it didn't have that HQ did was extra rehearsal space. Everything else was, I mean, Jason, from a tech standpoint, you've got pretty much everything you need all set up at Charnel in terms of lights and stuff, right?
Yeah, they had it's a full setup of lights. There's a decent speaker setup, and a board available to plug everything into. So from a tech side, I was happy. I can go sit in my dark corner every week or every month and push buttons as I do. So that was pretty great. Just the aesthetic was great. The acoustics were always are always solid. And it was just a fun space to work in.
Charnel has a very special place in my heart because it is the first real theater I ever performed in. Like real actual theater space. Because HQ, yeah. There was another one that was kind of a black box, but not really. Actually, I didn't perform in that one. I wrote for that month. So yeah, Charnel's the first real theater I ever performed in.
Oh, that was actually the first 24-hour show that I did, because my first show was BYOT, which was not a traditional process. It was 2 months to do these 10-minute scenes. but yeah, I think so that puts us up, I think it about 2018, I think, right? Because we did BYOT that year was in February up at Factory, and then the first. Did you have a monthly show that February at Charnel, or was that March, or no, that January? So would it be that March, the first one at Charnel?
So we had already been running shows at Charnel when we decided to do BYOT at Factory. The idea was to take BYOT to another part of the city, in part for people who, especially for rehearsals, for people who lived up north, because so much of the cast did live up north. And so for that tech week, it was really useful. And then also just to have a different look and feel of the theater than what we normally had. So I don't remember when the first, dear, do you remember what the first Charnel show was?
No, I don't. I'm trying to place it in the grand scope of things here. It had to have been sometime close to that point, just from an overall timing perspective. So, I mean, probably not too much longer from when we had taken over.
I was gonna say I might be able to figure it out based on the old Facebook banners, but I don't think I have access to those files anymore.
Or even probably just like YouTubing it. Yeah, you could YouTube and just track the.
That's true. But yeah, before then, long enough before then, that I remember as someone who was very emotionally invested in Charnel, I was like, but why? Like, I remember being very confused. But the people who were running BYOT were really invested in doing it somewhere else. It must have been before that. I'll have to look. But yeah, around that time, if not before, then like literally the next one after.
Yeah, because then, yeah, we were there up until the beginning of the pandemic. So that would have been 2017 somewhere to March 2020 was our final, our last most recent show at Charnel.
Because we missed 1 month specifically because the pipes froze at the beginning of 2020. I'm trying to remember which one that was. That was
February 2018 or 2019, I think. Yeah.
Mm,
Because
yeah,
it was because I think that turned into Gregmas or something. It was like the great polar vortex or something like that.
yeah, that was super fun.
So yeah, it looks like we did January 2018 was at Factory, but their side theater. Like they've got like their main one, then they have the storefront. And then February was BYOT. And then it looks like March may have been Charnel, but I don't have any banners from before then. So I don't know if 2017 had any at Charnel.
Mm-hmm. Man. So yeah, and then we were
Wow.
there, yeah, pretty much about 2.5-ish years almost then. That was kind of home base residency. So that kind of leads me into with us talking about the notorious pipe burst incident. What are some kind of highlights for both of you in terms of like either shows that you wrote that were kind of inspired by the space, or just fun technical elements, Jason, with working in that space, or just shows that you did there? What were kind of some of the highlights for each of you during that kind of 2.5-year period?
Man, again, technically it was as an overall space was pretty solid, except for the times that there was some other show that was running and they had dismantled the entire light board and soundboard. So we show up day of, it's like, 10, 11, I think it was like 11 o'clock was, I think, the earliest they would get in there. And yeah, I'm like, well, that's problematic. So we text Billy. I'm like, hey, what's going on? He comes downstairs. He's swearing like like a sailor. Um, and quickly, like, okay, this goes here. This goes here. Let's get this hooked up. Let's test this. Go power this on. It's just it was fun because it's like, okay, well, let's go have our directors meeting while we get all the rest of this stuff taken care of. And scenes 1 and 2, you may or may not have a sound and light for your rehearsal period. So good luck. Was a fun one. And I always remember like the couple of months that we had where the staff had various staff members had other obligations. So it was like, okay, well, who's going to production manage this month? Well, Jason's here. Jason's running tech, and he's running this, and he's also now and somehow also the host of the show at the same time. I'm like, okay, let's make sure the show gets off properly. Let's get tech going. And now I have to run up from the booth, go up all the way down there, go up on stage. I'm like, I don't want to be on stage. That's not what I signed up for. But now I've got to talk to everybody, and I can't see anything. It's just blinding lights straight in your face. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, this makes a lot more sense. Why everybody, you get on stage and it's a little bit easier because you can't see anybody. I had not yet realized that part. So having to then introduce scenes and try to be moderately funny, like, this is just not my wheelhouse. What is going on? And then finish saying it, and then have to run all the way back down the aisle back to the booth, get everything ready, and then start the scene. And I think my major most fun part ultimately a lot of times was hearing new people who'd come in and they'd be like, oh, this place is pretty cool, and they'd wander into the back into the old embalming room and go, oh, this was like a real funeral chapel. Like, yeah, it is.
There's a drain in the floor.
Not gonna lie, my first show, that's the vibe that I had. I come in, and I think that my first show was March of 2018, I think it was. And I was directing, and I was directing Jake, and I directed, oh gosh, 2 other people who I haven't really seen since, but and it was written by Anuja and I think a couple of her friends. It was The Magic of Middle Management. Yeah. And I just remember they made a joke about Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was like, hey, from there. But I just remember like walking in, and I mean, it's not jarring, but it takes like it there's this effervescence that you have to kind of take in as you work your way back to the embalming room. It's like, all right, long, dimly lit house, cute black box stage, and then you got to go back down that little exposed brick hallway to that like back stage area where the bathrooms are, and then there's like that extra little hallway back to then the backstage, which was the embalming room. And it's like, it's just, it grows on you. The embalming table grows on you. But like my first time, I was just like, when was that last used? Oh my God. But like it endears itself to you.
It really does. Like, just, again, all that dark wood, all the just the overall lighting. It's just a fun space. It's got just enough distance between locations that for our purposes, where you've got 4 to 5 different groups all rehearsing at the exact same time, while a group's trying to also do their actual stage time for rehearsal with tech and whatnot. it's just a fun combination. Everybody could get the space they needed. And worst case, it's like, okay, during the non-garbage winter months, which here in Chicago gives you about 3 months of use, they could go outside because, Logan Square, was like a half a block away at that point. And people could go to the park and rehearse there. They could go outside on the street if they needed to. There was just plenty of space to be able to do what they needed to do. Yeah, it very much after the HQ transition, where you're like, I feel homeless, I feel lost. It very much felt like, okay, this is home. We have a place to be at that point, at least from that perspective. Because while I enjoy troubleshooting random tech layouts and fire hazard light boards as much as the next person, you want like I just want something that's generally going to work, and it's generally going to be solid quality, and I want to be able to put on the best show possible in that sense, and I felt like we were in a pretty good spot to be able to do that, which was always nice.
It always felt like we grew up. Like, you had the true nomad years, the living room years, and then moving to HQ, which was like living room 2.0 sort of thing, a theater living room, and then going nomadic again. Going to Charnel felt like the natural next step. They got like 100-seat capacity. It's the true black box theater, real sound, real lights, real great people who own it. When you were asking about one of our favorite, like, what are our favorite things about Charnel, I gotta say my favorite thing is Billy and Vicky. Like, they are if you guys are watching this, you are the best odd couple owners in the entire world. It's always great working with them, and they're the nicest people, when you don't get there too early in the morning, which I feel that because I am so not a morning person. So it's just, and then location, like, you cannot underestimate the value of having a Walgreens across the street.
And burritos.
Yeah, burritos y más. Like, that is the best thing about that location. But yeah, having the Walgreens right there, that was one thing with HQ. There was a Walgreens not far, and then there was a thrift store not far. And if Charnel had a thrift store around the corner, that is the ultimate for 24-hour theater. So we did miss that. But other than that, it felt like, we still had the bar, but it was an actual, like, run bar situation by Billy. And it felt like we were grown-ups. We weren't kids playing at theater anymore. Which we weren't before, but having like a real and consistent theater space every single month, as opposed to the nomadic feel, was just really, really valuable for that.
I was trying to think of favorite scenes, and my problem, I most of the rest of the company can like call out their favorites, this, and this. My problem is I see all of them, and I'm like directly involved whenever I'm text doing a scene. You're like, okay, well, you get pretty invested in every one of them, so everyone's like, oh, this was my favorite. I'm like, I saw so many scenes last night, but okay, who was in what? And they all just kind of blend together eventually. But I distinctly remember there was a scene not that long ago into the grand scheme of it, with Corey O'Brien and what's her name, the
Ashton, I think.
Ashton, that's right. Yeah, like, she just became a member not that long ago.
I was about to bring up this scene.
And oh my god, so if you didn't see this in particular scene, it was just the two of them, but This was a brew breaker scene, if I remember correctly. He this was, I think this was like his first time writing for us, and he it starts off and they're just kind of like not doing anything, and like the lights are still off and everything's still like nothing's happening. And on the amount of people that were looking back at me like, dude, you got to do something here. I'm like, it's not me, this is the scene. It's just I was one of my favorites. Just it was so absurd, it was so ridiculous, and the room I thought was going to die of laughter. um it was just so good.
Similarly, and this has nothing to do with the space. This has everything to do with like 4 different people who are part of this company who all saw a moment and took it. I was in a scene that required, I don't remember if I appeared out of nowhere or if I did a quick change, but it required an amount of music with the lights off, and suddenly I'm there like doing like a pose. And the music that was chosen was, what was it? Was it Backstreet Boys?
I think so.
Was it like Backstreet's Back? And someone gets the room singing along. And suddenly the entire room, including like Ross and Vinny and all of these very loud male voices are singing along to the Backstreet Boys. And I have to look serious when the lights come up. I did not look serious when the lights came up. I was cracking up. I was ready to jump into the audience and kill all of them. It was just like one of those just really great moments. But yeah, anything that was elevated by the like black box factor, or the fact that there's technically in a way 3 to 4 entrances to that stage, because you've got the 2 in the back that are really one, but you can come in from either side, and then the one on the side, or you can come up from the audience. And you can mix that up, because if you don't know, in the space, that side door does have a hallway that runs all the way to the bar, and Vicky and Billy don't love us using that hallway for a variety of reasons. But if you wanted to, you could have someone exit out the back and then come running up the front, or vice versa. Which it makes for some really fun opportunities for direction for the scene. Yeah, no, it's a great space and I love it. One very mushy thing that I love about the space is, as we mentioned about Jason, he does tech. And for a long period of time, I was doing the fundraising. And so I'd be up front taking tickets. And there is a little window that I could open that would look right into the tech booth from where I was standing. And so he and I would like lean through that window to watch the scenes as I'm waiting to see if anyone else shows up, and be right there with my honey, and then hand him a beer because he can't leave the tech booth and I'm right by the bar, and things like that. So that was always really nice.
Oh gosh. Well, I think that's actually a really sweet spot to kind of stick the
Aren't I
proverbial pin
cute?
in it. No, oh my gosh, that, yeah. No, I forgot about those little stained glass windows. Yeah, you just unlatch, open, peek.
Those
Yeah,
windows are actually really handy when you have people who come in late and you don't want them to like walk into the scene. It's like, okay, you can watch, just stand right here. And Billy and Vicky would watch the scenes from them all the time. I think Billy might be one of our biggest fans. He would just be cracking up back there.
yeah,
He loves having theater in that space.
yeah, and it's a great space. When the world is more normal, or open, would love to get back there at some point. But yeah, oh gosh, I feel like there needs to be a separate one of these that's just Charnel House stories. It's just people like trickle in and talk about it. Because I mean, we were there probably almost at the same amount of time that we were probably at HQ or any other location.
We may have
I
been there
definitely,
longer than HQ, but I am not sure. We'd have to do some serious Facebook digging to see if we can
Yeah.
figure out which one we were there longer for.
Yeah. But just the more you guys are talking about it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's where I really grew. I mean, that's the only place I really did shows with BYOT. But that's where I really grew into that's where I became a company member and where I started the 24-hour shows. I've only acted in one 24-hour scene, and it was at Charnel. Oh man, and I call myself an actor. Um, but yeah, no, that makes just the more that you guys are talking about kind of the growing up and growing into ourselves more, it's just
For some of us, I was just thinking about it. And yeah, it's got to be about 8 years that I've been in BYOT, because I would have been about 24 when I started with BYOT, and I am not 24 anymore. So when you think about that and think about, there's a lot of us in that class, that like age range, and who were there from pretty early on and have continued through. And so a lot of us spent, a couple of years of either our late 20s or early 30s as performers. Or for some people, our early 20s. It's that time period is so formative for anyone creative. And so to spend that time there was really special. And it was really valuable.
Yeah, and just in a space that is run by people who get what you're doing and want you to succeed, and then you're there doing it in 24 hours with everyone else who wants it to succeed. Gosh. Well, I think with that, we'll probably go ahead and call it for the Charnel House years, although I feel like we'll be revisiting this subject at some point. But I just want to say thanks, Jason. Thanks, Meg. As always, it's great. Any excuse to see y'all's faces makes me happy. But again, thanks for sharing some of your time
Absolutely.
and chat about this. Are there any final words from either of you?
I look forward to the next time we can actually do all this in person, whenever that may be. I may be 40 years old at that point, but we'll still be good. So
Truly. Well, thanks everyone who is watching this, and stay tuned for our next one. Not exactly sure, maybe digging into COVID era BYOT at this point. I think that's where we leave off from Charnel House. But yeah, thanks so much. Stay tuned for more. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, which if you're watching this, you're probably at the YouTube, and come play with us.